Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how to make this TOTS cake featuring Pip Penguin and Freddy Flamingo and all the little doodads you see on here. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe it. It helps me out. And now this video is long, so I'm going to give you a little heads up here. If you want to see Freddy, just hang on a moment. You'll see how to make him. If you want to see the logo, just the heart shape, then just go ahead to 14 minutes and it should be right about there. If you want to see just how to make Pip, go to about 18 minutes in. And if you want to see the cake, just go 28 minutes in, or right about there. And it should be able to help you out. Now let's get ready to go. All right, to begin with Freddy, we are going to start from the bottom and work our way up. I have 2 lollipop sticks, as you see, stuck into a piece of styrofoam. I put a little paper towel on top. And I'm going to start with his boots. I have some blue gum paste, and I kind of bent it like a Christmas stocking, you know, like a letter L. And I'm hollowing out the top there just a little bit. I have a nice little curve for the toe. Just bend them up nice and tall and straight. And when you're happy with it, do the same thing with the other. You're going to have to make sure it's the same size, which is why I cut some of the extra off there. Hollow out the top a little bit, just like I'm doing with the back of that veining tool. And yeah, just again, make sure they are even. Just try to make them as even as you can. When you're happy with them, go ahead and ram them through with that lollipop stick. This is going to become part of his legs, and we're going to work this up into the body itself. So make sure it sits comfortably in the styrofoam if you're using that. And we're going to trim off the extra a little bit too, but now we're going to go on to his legs. In order to do his legs, I'm going to take those sticks back out of his boots, as you see here. And I'm using orange gum paste that I threaded over the lollipop stick, and I'm trying to make it as skinny as possible. He has very skinny legs, he has very long skinny neck, he's long and skinny all over the place. Unfortunately, I can't make him as long and skinny as I want because I don't use toothpicks. I only use stuff that's safe for kids to have in their mouths. So I'm using my lollipop sticks here. It's going to be a little bit fatter, but it'll still be okay. So I just, as you can see, I'm pinching off all the excess, and then I trim it off with my knife. I roll it to make it nice and even, pinch off that extra again, trim it off. You got to be careful not to go too thin with it because you end up hitting your lollipop stick and then you get to start over, which happened to me, and I didn't show you in my little video here. That all gets, erased with the power of editing. It's as if it never even happened. But once you have the legs nice, stick them back into the boots. And now, as you can see, I did trim off those lollipop sticks, and I'm moving on to Freddy's body. I've got a nice hot pink color here. I make a nice bulb at the bottom, nice long neck at the top, because his neck and his body, I'm just making it all one piece. And as you can see, I trimmed off those sticks a little bit more, and I'm just setting the body right on top. He should be skinnier. Again, he is much more lean in the cartoon than I'm making him here, but I gotta work with what I got. So I'm doing the best I can, darn it. Now I took some really skinny little pieces of my pink gum paste, a nice long rectangle that I rolled out and cut, a little bit of water around the top of each leg where it's near the body, and then I'm going to wrap it around the top of his leg, and yeah, that's just what I'm doing. If you look at pictures of him, his pink feathers do go down just into the tops of his legs a little bit, so that's what I'm trying to do here. Now, once I've got that in place, I realized that that neck I had made kept flopping forward, so I'm shoving a piece of dried spaghetti down the front of it into the body. I had my hand under it to make sure I didn't poke through. You gotta be careful if you do that, and that's just for the stability. This light blue color is going to become his jacket. I have a long rectangle, as you see, nice and thin, and I wrap it around him, and I mark it off, and I just start trimming. And I started, as you can see, with a really big rectangle here. And by the time I was done trimming and nipping it and trimming and thinning, as you can see, I kind of have like a big old fingernail clipping shape here. A crescent shape, if you will, that's just flat on each end. So now it wraps around, it overlaps a little bit because he's wearing that double-breasted coat kind of thing. And it's nice and even and round. You have room for his rump to stick out in the back. It doesn't cover up his legs or anything. Now I'm going to cut out my long, skinny little crescent here, and that's going to become the collar of his jacket. It just so happened to just make it, so that was fortunate. And I'm going to use some water, just like that, brush it all around, hold it into place. Make sure it's skinny at the ends where the jacket overlaps, and then gets a little bit thicker throughout. And you also have to make sure you press it down in proper place. Now this purple's going to become his wings. I rolled out my gum paste thicker here. I want it to be a decent thickness, but again, it can't be too thick because those poor little skinny legs have to support everything you're building on top of it. I hollow out the center as you saw there with my circle cutter. Now I'm just using my knife to cut out little triangle wedges in order to separate the wing feathers. I tried to make the wing feathers all the same thickness, like I had to go back and fix it a little bit to trim away a little more because I felt like the one was too fat. And I have big gaps on the sides where the main flight feathers are, and then as you get underneath, I'm taking much smaller little triangles out. Okay, so I did that on both sides as even as I could. And I do have squared off cuts here, so I'm using the back of my fingernail and I'm just pressing the corners in for each feather. I didn't need to show you each and every single one, but I'm just rounding off the feathers a bit. So there you go. All right, his wings are well begun. Okay, I've got my hot pink again, and I'm going to use this circle cutter that has like a scalloping around it that I found somewhere, I forget where, and I'm just going to fold it over like I'm making a sandwich out of his wing there, and it's going to kind of represent the pink feathers that come out over the top of his purple feathers. And I thought this was just a genius little shortcut. I was very proud of myself and happy with it because I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so it turned out good. I like how it worked out. I am trimming at a sharp angle there, those two last feathers, because now I have to put the sleeves of his jacket onto his wings. I rolled out more of the blue real thin again and just wrap it around again, kind of like a sandwich. And try to keep it tapered because it's much thinner where it meets his body. See, I'm trying to really shape it more. It's much thinner of the sleeve where it meets his body, and then it flares out to kind of follow the shape of his wing and his feathers. So that's what I'm trying to represent here. I feel like they probably should have been thinner, like I should have probably trimmed off even more or maybe taken more of the wing away first, but this is what I got. This is what I got. So it's not bad, though I still was happy with it. All right, I put some water on the wing and I bent it up so it will kind of fold along his body. If you need to have the wings out in a different position, you would have to let the body dry overnight. I don't know how else you could do it because it just becomes so much weight that if your gum paste is still soft, it's going to pull and cause it to sag awkwardly. So that's why I have the wings kind of folded up like this, kind of against the body. I'm trying to keep the weight centralized and as in, one location as possible. This is the tail feathers. I just, as you saw, rolled out one long hot dog piece, trimmed off the two ends there at the bottom just to make it look like it's two little tail feathers, stuck it on with some water, zipping right along here. This is going to become the patches on his sleeves. It's just two dark blue rectangles, just the same color as his boots or his sneakers, I guess they are. And I'm just putting them right along the top of his wing. I'm going to move over to white right now. This is white gum paste rolled out super skinny. I tried to do this like seriously as skinny as I could. And I'm going to start working on the boots. In order to cover the toe and go around the sole, you make kind of a hat shaped. So you have it real long on the sides and a little hat in the middle. And then when you put it on, you can just wrap it all around. And as you see, I didn't go long enough, so I'd had to cut another little skinny strip to wrap it around the back and connect in the two sides. But if you do it right, then it goes all the way around and it looks really sharp. I'm taking really skinny little rectangles here and doing up and down the laces of his boots. They go very far up and down, you see, so just put as many skinny little ones in there as you can. I'm using those same little tiny skinny strips to put the marks on the arrows, I guess they are, on his patches. So it's just one little line, and then I took another skinny little one and just bent it in half. So there's no trickery or anything sneaky here. It's just a straight line and then a bent line to make his little arrows. I also added 6 little buttons to his jacket. You'll see right there. There's 5 of them, and there's number 6. Nothing surprising there, just little balls pressed in with some water. Gonna go back to his other shoe because I do jump around a bit. And I made another hat. This one I made nice and long, so this one actually made it almost completely around. But we're gonna pretend it did. It made it all the way around. Yep, sure did. So again, because it didn't honestly quite make it around, I just added another little skinny piece in the back to connect it. And smooth it off, press it up tight against the foot. Add your laces just like before. Make sure they're nice and even. Square off your toe a little bit if it's a little sloppy, which mine was. And there, yeah, like looking nice, right? Like I was really kind of happy with him. I was struggling with this guy. Like I couldn't figure out how I could make him. And again, the legs should be skinnier, the neck should be skinnier. You know, you look at your finished product and you pick it apart. But overall, I really am happy with him. This is going to be his head. It's kind of an oblong circle. It's a little bigger on the top and squared off on the top. And then it is on the bottom. I'm using the small end of my ball tool to hollow out a couple of long ovals for his eyes. And this is going to be his beak. His beak, again, is kind of tricky because it's a yellow beak with a black tip. And I didn't know what I was going to do for that, so I just winged it. I made this kind of bulbous shape here. I pinched off the two sides to make the beak because it kind of wraps around his head a bit. And then I took some black, a ball of black, and just rolled it out real skinny, like as skinny as I could. Laid it over the top of his beak. And then I'm going to pinch the bottom and then trim it. So we're kind of doing the same thing that we did with the wing as before, where you just kind of wrap it around and trim off the extra. That's all I'm doing here. I ended up trimming off a little bit more than I'm going to show you, just because his beak was enormous once I actually held it up to the head, which I probably should have done first. So in hindsight, I'm going to recommend you hold it up before you add the black, because otherwise you have to pick it apart like I did and just keep trimming and trimming, and make sure you get a nice little curve to the end of his beak, but you don't want it to be predatory. So don't have like a hooked beak, you know, like a sharp pointy hooked beak. Make sure it stays slightly rounded on the end, because this is still a preschooler show. Now I trimmed off a little bit extra with the circle cutter to make it hug the shape of the face. And then I just stuck it on. Now I'm adding some white gum paste for the eyes. Nothing special or surprising here. Smoothing it out with my ball tool. Try to make them even. I'm adding some dark red for the eyes, for the irises of his eyes. And they do not take up his whole eye. Be careful how full you make them. Like leave at least half of the eye still white. The black, the pupil of his eye does fill up a lot of the red, so just be aware of that as well. And I'm using the back of my X-Acto knife to put a line in each of the yellow sides there of his beak to make him happy, because he likes his job. I'm cutting off the top of his head because I cheat when I make hats. I am not good at making hats follow the curve of the head, so I just cut the top of the head off. I make it easy for myself. His hat is kind of lumpy, so I have a big ball in the front and a smaller one in the back that you saw I just separated with my tool. This is going to be the brim of the hat. I just circle cut it a crescent shape. Stick it on with a little bit of water. There you go. And his hat is tiny. It's very small for the size of his head. Another little skinny crescent piece here to go vertically against the front of his hat. So I don't know why I might have misjudged the picture, but that I was using as a reference. That's what it looked like to me. How it's got like the little bit in the front. I'm adding a couple little highlights just because it makes his eyes sparkle and shine. Look at that. Now he's all happy and sparkly. And when you get the head done, stick it on his neck. There you go. Now you're like, ooh, he looks great. We're not done yet. Okay, we're going to take one more piece of pink. Going to put two little ridges in it. So now we have 3 separations. Make them nice and rounded. And that's going to become the feathers on the back of his head. So just stick them on like that. A little bit of water. There you go. I'm just using my knife blade to press it in against his head a little more firmly. And yeah, see how it looks. Okay, I'm going to add one more little thing, which is his eyebrows, using a food coloring marker. And now he's done. Now for the logo, I went online and printed out a size of the logo that I liked, cut it out. And then we're going to start with the heart. I cut out the entire heart, and the outside of the heart, the dark gray on my printer there, is going to be pink. The inside is going to be light blue. So I just traced it as you saw in the pink, trimming off that extra bit that I don't really need anymore, but I'm going to keep the outside because I'm going to also hollow out my pink heart here. So line up the dark color, the pink or whatever, if you have a color one, and then trace around. I'm using my X-Acto knife, and then lift it out and toss it aside. You don't need it. You just need that outside ring of pink there like that. And you're probably looking at it being like, dang, you know, that doesn't look very good. And it'll be fine. We'll fix it up, so don't worry. It's okay. I'm using light blue. It's actually sky blue. If you use a certain brand, you'll know what I'm talking about. And rolled it out, same thickness, and using the inside tracer there, the inside piece of paper as in my template, stick it inside. I use a little bit of water and push it all together. Now I'm taking the rest of my template here. I've got this part, which is the cloud at the bottom. I'm trimming off the black, which looks black. It's actually dark blue. So we'll come back to that. But for now, we're going to do the cloud. Lay it on your gum paste, same thickness as everything else, because that makes it nice and neat. And I'm using my X-Acto knife to just carve it on out. Nothing really special here. And I know that I've always used those sticks, my paint stirring sticks. And I also know that some of those little rolling pins come with little rubber bands, basically, that you put on each end to measure the thickness. I have those. I just never use them. They take too long to swipe on and off, and then I have the chance of losing them. I don't know. I just don't use it. I just use my sticks instead. Okay, as I was talking, I trimmed out the 3 little wings. I think it's a wing, the feathers of the wing there, and I'm just putting them to a side. Here's the dark blue that I mentioned before. I'm just going to outline with this. So I have this rolling tool that rolls nice straight lines. If you don't have it, just use your knife and cut. A long thin line. I'm going to outline the heart. I just put some water around the edge. I'm doing all this on a paper towel too, guys, because it makes it easier so when it dries, and when you have to move it around, you're not screwing it up every time you touch it or move it, which is always good to not screw up what you're working on. So wrap it around, using my knife blade, tuck it in at the top there, just so it looks a little tidier. Pat it into shape if you need to a little bit. And there you go. Okay, here comes the white cloud from before. So match it up. Look how nicely it just tucks right on in there. It's like I used a template or something, right, to figure that out. And I'm using the same blue, the same dark blue there to outline each of my little feathers. I'm just using some water, wrap it around, tuck it in, trim it off, make it fit. And you might have to use kind of a generous amount of water for this part because these little suckers kept just coming off, as you see here. And I just kept having to press them back into place. But don't worry, they will stick. Just give them a chance. And yeah, so when you're attaching your second one, you saw that cut. I did add an angle there, so it was nice and pointy. So it kind of just shoves right in between the one below it and the light blue of the feather itself. Wrap it around, stick it into place. There you go. Finish it off. Do that last one. And it's okay if it's a little bit off. It's not going to, like, the dark blue seems a little thick, so kind of put the placement off a little bit of those feathers of the wing. But it still works. Nobody's going to look at it and be like, hey, that's not right. So it looks good, right? Okay, put it aside. Okay, for Pip Penguin, I have a lot of white gum paste, so I'm just rolling out a big old log of white, making what looks like a big marshmallow. And that's going to be his body, his torso. The black that I'm matching up to it on the left there, and I'm trimming right now, that's going to be his head. His head is going to be, of course, the same thickness and a little bit shorter than the torso, but only a little bit. Like, he's got a pretty good size head, so don't discount his head there, okay? I'm using my lollipop stick. I don't use toothpicks. Shove it on there and put it aside. This is going to be his rump that sticks out beneath his blue jacket. So that white torso in the middle there that you're probably like, what the heck? He's not a panda bear. It's going to be hidden by his coat. So I just happen to have a lot of white and I used it. You could use whatever color you wanted. Pink, purple, yellow, doesn't matter. It's going to be hidden. Okay, I rolled out the white nice and thin. This is going to be for his little belly patch there. And I stretched the circle, as you could see, so it's nice and straight on the sides. And then I'm trimming off the extra where it meets the torso, because otherwise it's going to have a thickness there that'll just not look right. This circle is going to be for his head. I found one that's really good size because the white of his face covers a lot of area. So I flattened the one top piece there on the right, and I used my paintbrush to push it in the center because he's got that little, quintessential divot in his white that penguins have. I'm using my blade just to flatten off the top because it's not really rounded on the top. It's pretty flat. Now I'm flattening off the sides a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it around just like that. And I'm going to kind of dent in about halfway down so it looks like he's got little cheeks that come out at the bottom. And I'm using my lollipop stick, my paintbrush to kind of exaggerate it. So now you see he's got his little eyes, and then below that his cheeks come out to the sides a bit more. And just pull them a little bit if you need to, like I'm giving a little tug there. It should overlap, the white should overlap onto the torso, okay? Because it a little bit shows because his jacket is kind of a V-neck. So you got to bring it down a little bit. I'm using my ball tool there, And I am just kind of blending it in so it doesn't have that big ridge that I was afraid of with the little tummy patch. That's why we cut it off earlier. Okay, I've got the sky blue again, the same color as before. And I'm making his jacket. I kind of jumped ahead, but I'll show you what I did, so don't worry about that. That long strip that I cut out there originally is going to be his collar, so I just cut out a long thin piece, put it aside. This long rectangle is going to be his coat, so you take 2 little nips off of each corner like you see there, and then you're going to wrap the side on the left, looking at it, the side on the left first, and then overlay the right onto it. So that way he's got his double-breasted coat, I think it's called. There's that piece that I cut out before, so wraps around to be his collar. I put 2 little marks where the little V's are cut out at the bottom, you see? And I just trim off the extra, so it's no problem there. And then, of course, once I wrapped it around again, I realized I missed the mark, so you're going to see that in a second. I'm just using some water to paint around. And there it is. There, I had to go back and fix it because I messed up on that one. So if you mess up on it, you're probably going to have to roll out another piece. I was being super lazy and just didn't do it. So yeah, it's in the back of him and you don't see it. So I was taking a shortcut, which hopefully you guys won't do. You'll be better than me. So now he's got his coat and his collar on his coat taken care of. There's my good old piece of paper towel because his leg kept falling off anytime I moved him. And the leg itself, it's kind of like a kidney bean shape, you can see. It's just kind of like a little log that I just curved over and thinned out on one end. And I'm pressing it against his belly right up to the white so that his legs kind of are in the front of him more so than the sides. This long piece is going to be his arm, and the blue I'm rolling out is going to be the sleeve for his jacket. So as you can see, I kind of made a nail shape there. I'm curving it like a letter S to just have his arms kind of bent and resting on his hips. Taking my thin piece of blue, the little long strip I cut out there, trim it off the edge and press it together. I'm using a piece of dried spaghetti in the back of the sleeve and in his arm to press it into his body and hold it into place, because what you didn't see, and I edited out, was it falling off a whole bunch of times because it just wasn't going to stay with water, and I was being silly to just not use a piece of spaghetti to begin with. Alright, so match up the other arm, make sure it's the same size, same as before, wrap it in the blue, pinch it together, cut it off. Use that little piece of dried spaghetti, stick it on in there, in the back of the arm where nobody will see it, right inside the sleeve. And there you go, his arms are done. I'm trimming off the edge of his legs because we're going to add his feet. Okay, a little ball of orange, flatten it out, make it into a triangle shape, and then I'm using my back of my paintbrush again, just pressing in twice on either side to make it look like he has 3 little toes, you see? And if you press in the top between the toes, it kind of separates it out at the top too. So now he's got little, I don't know, I want to say duck feet, but penguin feet. He's got little flipper feet. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, this is going to be his beak. I made a triangle. Okay, see how it's kind of triangular? And it's way too long, and it's pointy in the front, and pointy on the top, and flat on the bottom. So not quite a pyramid, kind of a triangle, sort of. Okay, so I trimmed it off because it was too long, and it's hard to see here, but I'm using my blade there to make lines all around the beak to give him his mouth. And it's hard to see, but you just line it up, make it straight around. But when you put it on his face, if you curl up the 2 sides, see how I'm pinching and kind of lifting on the 2 ends, it'll make it look like he's happy. So there you go. Now he's a happy little penguin because he can smile. Okay, his eyes are teal. They're a mix of blue and green. They're not just straight up light blue like his coat. I made 2 little circles as you saw. I cut off the bottom to make it a little flat, just a little flat, using some water to put it into place. And then I'm going to add little black pupils to it. Okay, a little ball of gum paste, and I'm using that ball tool again, and I'm just kind of flattening and pressing and smoothing and circling as carefully as I can to not mess up the actual teal part of his eye. Now, I had a hard time with his eyes. This is just how I did it. If you guys come up with a different way that works better, let me know, because honestly, I struggled with this. Alright, I'm rolling out some black really, really thin, and I'm putting it against the entire inside of each eye. You see how I did that? So it goes all the way down to the bottom of each eye, and it should be pretty flat when it comes up because his eyes are very oval. They're not really very round. And the black comes up and curves around and goes back down a little bit. So yeah, his eye should be pretty flat on the sides and bottom and then nice and oval. So like I said, if you guys have a better way to do this, this is just how I did it. And it's not bad, but I feel like there's room for improvement, but I'm not really sure where I'd go with it. Okay, you just saw me add 6 little white buttons to his jacket, and now I'm going to add his hat. I made a square, kind of thick as you see, of gum paste, and I'm going to use my little tool there, my fondant smoother, just flatten it out to make it a little wider, a little flatter, because it was kind of tall. Once you get a good size, and you're going to make the brim, I just made a circle, cut it almost in half, as you can see, and when you get it as wide as your square, I use that rolling pin to flatten the one edge, and that's going to tuck underneath the brim of the hat, or the edge of the hat, so that it will sit a little nicer and won't stick up real high in the front or anything. And when you place it on, make sure you get a good curve to the bill, okay? See how it's really curved? For some reason, his hat is designed to be that way. They don't have a flat bill on it. They have it really curved. This little piece I'm cutting out of black is kind of thick, and that's going to be his little hair feathers or whatever. So make it kind of wedge-shaped, make one line down the center of it on each side, and then it goes right against his head on the back, right where his hat and his head connect in the back, okay? So a little white highlight on each eye, and there you go. You got Pip. Not too shabby, right? I made him sitting just because it's easier. He has tiny little legs and an enormous body. He would crush anything that he tried to stand on unless you really let him dry first. And sometimes I get impatient, so I cheat. I make them sit. Now these 2 little white cloud things are going to be the patches that go on his jacket and his hat. I'm using my edible food coloring markers. I'm using the teal to make the heart and the little wing feathers. I'm using the hot pink to outline the heart on each one, as you can see. I'm oh so carefully doing. And then I will use the dark blue in a moment to just kind of outline everything one more time. Now, again, you know, like if you are able to come up with a way that makes him standing, that would be pretty cool to know about too. I feel like if I let him dry, he would have to be really completely dry before you could add legs and have him standing, and you'd probably have to use lollipop sticks coming out of him while he dried, but I guess it could be done. But this, I feel, is a very good substitute if you're not up for it. So those little 2 pieces that I drew out there, I just stuck them on his coat, and now he's finished. Now I'm going to do the last part, which is the cake. I ended up going with a teal color. It was kind of darker than what I expected it to be, so, you know, choose your color accordingly. This is just what I went with. I'm rolling out my fondant nice and big. I'm going to end up covering an 8-inch tiered cake with this. So I roll it out, flip it over my rolling pin, and then lay it over top of my cake oh so carefully. Going to pull up on the outer edge and then smooth down the sides with my hand, just kind of patting down toward the bottom. You see, you can kind of lift up the edge, pull it out so you get a kind of a flare to it, and then press down. That way you'll avoid a bunch of the wrinkles that form sometimes on your sides of the cake when it gets little folds in it, and if it doesn't just line up perfectly. I'm using my pizza cutter there to trim off the extra. And now I'm just smoothing off what I got left there with my fondant paddle. Okay, now I'm going to take some white gum paste, and I have a teardrop template there. It's hard to see. It's just a white piece of paper that I'm tracing out. I'm going to make 2 white teardrops. These are going to be little baby bundles that the TOTS deliver. I'm going to put one on each side of the logo on the cake. And I'm also going to make, out of gum paste again, some big white fluffy clouds because they fly around delivering the babies, so I thought the clouds would be fun to do. So I made a straight cut across the bottom and then 3 big lumps across the top. And I made 2 of them, and I'm going to have them standing behind the figures. Now for the baby itself, I decided to make a bunny and a kitten. So this is going to be my little yellow bunny. I have just a little circle that I kind of cut a little crescent off of and put it up against the side. I'm going to make a couple of ears. I'm just using my yellow gum paste again. Made, as you see, kind of like an oblong shape there. It's flat at the bottom. I'm hollowing out the center a little bit. I'm going to put a little piece of pink gum paste in the center there. As you see, I did that already. Flattened it out and trimmed off what doesn't need to be there. Bent it over just to make it a little more 3D, make it more interesting, and then do it again. So here's my other oblong shape. I'm going to hollow out the center. I'm going to add a little pink to it. I'm going to flatten out the pink. I'm going to trim it so it fits up against the head. I'm going to bend the ear, and then I'm going to connect it all together with a little bit of water once I'm happy with it. I decided to make it even more interesting looking by having his big little feet sticking out the other side of the bundle there. So I added 3 little pads to the foot that you can see there, and then a big one in the middle. The other foot, I just put some lines in it so you can see like the bottom of one, the top of the other. Put a couple little pieces for hair, and I'm just using my veining tool to add some lines into the bundle itself. Again, just to make it a little more detailed. Now, to add my logo, it hardened on me, so I'm sticking it on with another piece of gum paste. I just used a little bit of water to connect it. I'm adding my little bunny bundle right there, just stuck it on the side with some water. It was still soft, so it still fit up against it without any problems. I trimmed off the top, and then I made kind of like a letter Y shape there, trim off the bottom stem of the Y, and had a circle, a ball in the center there to make it look like the knot at the top. Cute, right? So, okay, here's our kitty. Same thing as the bunny. I'm going to put some lines in it with the veining tool. I have a little orange head this time, and I am going to end up switching sides, so don't get too attached to it being on the right there. But I made a couple little triangles to make the ears, like nothing out of the box or, world shattering here. So I just switched the sides. I have a couple little triangles that I bent over to make it little tufts of hair. And now I'm going to roll out a longer piece, keep it nice and round, trim off the one end, and then fold it over so it's like his tail's coming out the other side. You can see I stuck it on the side of the cake already, and I trimmed off the top, so I'm going to add a couple little triangles of pink to his ears because I was like, oh, he's kind of boring looking. I'm going to give him a little more detail. So I did, and there's my little tie at the top. Put the knot in the middle, connecting the two, and there you go. Now we got our 2 little baby bundles, and there was a little bit of green on there because my fingers were all stained up, so I was transferring color. Now I am sticking on my Freddy. I'm going to stick on my Pip, and I'm going to add those clouds that I made before. Remember, I made them out of gum paste, and I dried them, let them dry a little bit, curved as you can see, so that they'll stand up on the cake. Now, to give my cake a little bit of color, I felt like it was lacking slightly because it's kind of darker than I wanted it to be with that dark teal. So I decided to add some color to it. I am just making some flowers. I have a little stamp kit, as you can see, so I am totally cheating, taking the easy way out. I took all the colors that I had laying around that I used to make the characters, so you're going to see Freddy's beak and feather colors, the jackets of the 2 of them. I didn't use the white or black because that's kind of, dull. But anyway, I put the flowers around the bottom of the base there, just alternating the colors. I put a few of them around the top as well, you're going to see in a second. And I felt like this kind of just gave it enough of a little bit of color to make it more fun, make it more pretty, make it more, Totsy. You could put your child's name on there, put a number on there. There's a little bit of room in the front, or add a couple of flowers, and there you go. You got Fred, you got Pip, you got Tots. I hope you find this helpful. Please like and subscribe because I find that helpful. I've got a ton of other videos out there, so please check those out. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.